I mentioned High Holiday Service. There was a particularly vile and wicked article that came out in Time magazine, and the admission was that it was to sell magazines. I hope every right-thinking person. I canceled my subscription when they told us how to pronounce Begin's name. Remember that? Okay, that's when I canceled my subscription to Time, and I will not buy or click on their website. They only did it recently to find out the new most vile thing that they had done. Anyway, there's an article that says Israelis don't want peace. All Israelis really want to do is make money. And then you go down into the article, and we realize that Israelis actually care about is social justice and education, because they actually did a poll on what Israelis care about. But he interviewed one guy who owns a real estate company, and with this one guy who's now the spokesperson for all 7 million Israelis, he was presented as the voice of Israel. He walks into a guy's office, and the guy says, yeah, I'm here to make money. I mean, he wasn't asking a professor about what Israelis think. He was asking one guy. So now that is on the head of Time magazine. Now, but why isn't so-called peace at the highest of their agenda? Because when they look at Hamas and Hezbollah, they realize, and it's hard for us to imagine this, you wouldn't be able to imagine this unless you really were in the American security establishment and you knew these people, how much they hate us, and there will never be peace. There's no conversation to be had because their conditions for peace is the destruction of the state of Israel. And every Jew either goes home or is killed. I mean, goes home means go back. In the Helen Thomas version, go back to wherever you came from to get out of this land. So that's what Hezbollah says. They don't hide it. That's what Hamas says. It's in their constitution. It's in their charter. So when someone says, in my charter, I will destroy you. Okay, if on your side you say, well, I just want peace. Well, that's a ridiculous thing to say. Because when the other person says, my goal is to kill you and I will not compromise on this goal, and you say, I want peace, well, that's obvious. What you're saying is, I don't want to be killed. And they're saying, well, that doesn't make any difference. I want to kill you. You say, is there anything I can do for you not to kill me? Yeah, go away. If you stay in your land, I will kill you. If you go away, I might not hunt you down. I probably won't. Right? So what choice does Israel have? So if Israelis say we're not interested in peace, it's a misinterpretation of Israelis saying we don't see much hope for peace with Hezbollah on our northern border, Hamas on our southern border, and the great fear that if the West Bank gets independence and they vote in a Hamas government, then they're completely surrounded by forces that want to destroy the state of Israel. So there's a kind of I wouldn't say a despair among Israel, but it's still a kind of resignation that we're not going to have peace unless something changes in the other side. I think if something fundamentally changed on the other side, Israelis would say, we'll adjust the border. That's probably hopefully that's the talk they're having now between Abbas and Netanyahu. So this is where I am at. When I finish my meditation on September 11th, I have a profound sense of sadness, number one, that we are in a protracted war with an enemy that will not give up, an enemy that is highly well-funded, highly trained, and can do unimaginable devastation with relatively very little resource. It makes me very sad as an American. That's why, as an American, as a Jew, I'm strongly in favor of security against those who want to destroy us. Which then takes me back to here. You see, so when I come back to this room, you people, I understand the temptation to be obsessed with this issue. As our Jewish identity, as our American identity. I mean, in the same way, by the way, you'll know that I do not agree with this. I do not agree this should be our core concern as far as a policy issue, but I don't think it ought to take over our inner lives. Meaning, I will give it as much attention as I can in my speaking, in my voting, in candidates to whom I give money. But in my day-to-day life, the people I affect the most is my wife, my children, the people around me. I can't let these kinds of things take away my primary concern of my struggle to be a virtuous human being. And not just be a virtuous human being in the world in which I live, that even in participating in this discourse, not allow myself to get swept into exaggerated, hyperbolic language, which tends to flatten out the world and to erase ambiguity and to erase complexity and try to, in spite of my very strong emotions, to maintain a true sense of perspective, to take a true sense of the complexity of things. It's a struggle for me. When I have colleagues ask me about my talks at the high holidays, I'm very tempted to talk only about this, because this is the thing about which I am most passionate publicly. I have to restrain myself and ask myself, who comes into my office and counsels with me week after week after week? One or two people who are suffering from political rage, right? It's there, right? And that's more like group therapy, by the way, when that happens. But if I were to say, what is the suffering in this room? The suffering in this room is we don't know how to get along with the people that we love. That's the suffering in this room.